cities, it's a seller's market for sure. Typically,
valuable.
rural practices, just understanding their situation, analyzing, hey, how marketable is this
With every
brand?
business, if you're in a rush, you're going to end up kind of getting
You
hurt.
just never know what would happen post-sale as well. You want him to be
What is
conveying.
something that a practice can do to prepare for sale that will increase the value of the business? Rich, nicely, Texas practice transitions. You are dental practice broker for the state of Texas. You help dental practices sell their business. So thank you for being on and thank you for sharing your story with us. I thoroughly enjoyed jumping into your background, your material, just because you're so specialized in what you do. Like you're really specific on what you do and the niche you serve. So you help dentists sell their practice and you help dentists at a certain income level and certain revenue level sell their practice one way, and then you have another. So let's talk about that. How you doing today? Let's dive in.
I'm doing great, Clayton. Thanks for this time.
Good. So when did you start? How did this start?
So this is my second job out of college, and met a person that was selling dental practices, and basically he had me at hello. I loved the idea of doing small mergers and acquisitions. I didn't need to go back and get an MBA and go to Wall Street to do this. I could just learn this craft and help people with their most important asset for most of them. And so I was instantly fascinated and drawn to this industry. It really suited a lot of my characteristics. I'm detail oriented. I'm a relationship person. These are relationship sales. This business is so much about trust between the buyer and the seller. And I want to foster a relationship between the buyer and the seller that's positive, and shepherd them through this process. When they're sitting down to sign contracts and exchange money, they're friends. They like each other. And I think that's a very important part of this process. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
I like that. And so the typical practice, like dentists that have retired over the years, and they get to that point where like, okay, they've had enough, they're ready for retirement. What's the process look like when somebody comes to you and they say, okay, I'm thinking about selling? Could walk us through what that looks like and then how long it takes?
Sure. So most doctors, the decision to sell really comes down to realizing their priorities have changed. Their priority historically has been financial as the number one goal. So owning a practice and working maximizes their income. At a certain point, that priority is going to shift. They're going to shift from financial to quality of life. Either have made enough money that they can make the decision to slow down or quit, or they're experiencing burnout or some sort of physical ailment that makes practicing uncomfortable. Either their shoulders hurt or their neck hurts or their hand is starting to hurt. So once they've made that decision that the priority is no longer maximizing their financial income, selling the practice is the logical next step. So the process begins with understanding their situation, analyzing, hey, how marketable is this practice, giving the doctor a very good estimate up front as to what the practice would be worth on the market. I go through and get 6 pieces of information and provide a practice evaluation for the doctor before they ever agree and sign a contract to list their practice with me. I really want them to know what the practice is worth before they move forward with me. There's a lot of work up front with the doctor. Once he decides to move forward and actually have a full appraisal done, there's a lot of paperwork that I require. I really want to understand the practice. So that could be quite involved. But once that process is complete, then there's really not a whole lot for the selling doctor to do. My job is then to go out there and find the ideal candidate for his practice or her practice. And so hopefully it's one of the doctors I already have that's registered with me as a buyer. If it's one of those doctors, then typically the deal can be done in 4 months-ish. Sometimes it's delayed because the doctor has an extended time of giving notice to leave where they're at, or they're under contract with the military or with another type of institution that they have to complete that time. But If it's not one of those registered buyers, then it could take up to a year to find that right doctor. So anyone that tells you that the practice can be sold quickly is really telling you something that you want to hear to get your business. Typically, these practices take up to a year to sell.
Okay. It's a process. I think most people understand that anyway. I guess with every business, if you're in a rush, you're going to end up kind of getting hurt if you don't plan it early. You should think about what your plans are a year or two before you get into the buy or sell mode, right?
I really encourage doctors. I love to talk to doctors 1, 2, 5 years before they really think they're ready to retire, because I can often spend a lot of time with a doctor, understanding the practice as well, even in those initial exploratory conversations, because if there's an aspect of the practice that can be tweaked to make their practice more marketable or more valuable, and it doesn't take much or any work on their part to do that, then that's a very valuable piece of information for the doctor. Quad 2 time, having those pre-planning consultations up, years in advance.
Makes it much easier. The biggest mistake dentists can make when trying to sell the practice on their own.
Well, the trouble with doing that is you have two inexperienced people. They don't really know how the process goes. They might hire or lean on their lawyer or their accountant. They don't know either. They're not transactional people. So, and it's so easy for one party or the other to say or ask something that is going to upset the other doctor. And then you have who repairs that? How do you go forward? It can just kind of get muddy and uncomfortable. So doctors getting together to do deals. Us brokers just kind of laugh. I mean, it certainly can be done, and it does happen, but it's
a recipe for disaster.
You're not really saving any money, because most likely the buyer's going to whittle you down a little bit more than what you could get if you used a broker. So, I explain to buyers when they look to negotiate, I say, look, if this is the right practice for you, getting it for $50,000 cheaper or $100,000 cheaper, that's going to affect your monthly payment by, $1,000. It's not material. If this is the right practice for you, step up and pay the market price. If it's not the right practice for you, getting it cheaper certainly isn't going to make it the right practice. So I just explained to them that you don't want to upset the seller by making an offer that's going to potentially, cause them to not like you. And then you just never know what would happen post-sale as well. You want him to be conveying really positive aspects, thoughts about you to staff and patients. So most buyers understand that.
What is something that a practice can do to prepare for sale that will increase the value of the business?
Sure. So oftentimes doctors have potentially slowed down their hygiene department. I'll encourage them, hey, if you have some excess capacity here, go ahead and bring on another hygienist a day or two a week and get your active patient count up. You don't necessarily need to do more work, but more patients is better. The reason why dental practices have any value is access to the cash flow represented by the patient base. So bigger patient bases are always seen more positively than smaller patient bases. If you have two practices, each doing $1 million a year in the same neighborhood, presumably with the same demographic of patient, and one practice has 1,000 patients, and one practice has 2,000 patients, which one would you rather buy? You'd buy the one with 2,000 patients, because there's that much more dentistry to do, right?
That's reoccurring revenue. Do they get a different multiple for that if those patients are coming back every 6 to 12 months?
Maybe not a different multiple, because in private sales, it's not done on a multiple necessarily. It's really just a percentage of collections, but having a larger patient base makes it more attractive to more dentists.
Okay.
For sure.
Walk me through when a dentist calls you, says, I'm ready to retire, but I have nowhere to start. What's your first move? You do a free evaluation first, right?
Sure. After determining, hey, you are really ready to sell and this is what you want to do, I just offer up a free service to understand their practice and come up with a value. It's really just simple math. This is coming up with the value of the practice is not hard once you have the data. And the data basically is, I need 3 years of collections. I need a recent tax return or profit and loss statement, the active patient count. I need to have an understanding of the value of the equipment. I need to know the size of the facility, the number of treatment rooms. And from that information, I can determine what the practice value is with plus or minus 5%.
Okay, very cool. And you do that for free just to get the relationship started, right?
I just want the doctor to fully understand, before he signs up with me, what I think the practice is worth. So he's not guessing. He's not just trusting that I'm going to. It's just the information he needs to know, in my opinion.
Is there a recent story that you can think of a practice that didn't think they were sellable, but you were able to find a way to get the deal done?
I had a doctor with a denture clinic in Tyler. I was doing $1 million a year and he was taking home $500,000. So it was a very profitable enterprise for him, but not many people want to do just dentures. And it's kind of, the clientele's a little sketchy, right? So, the profitability was very attractive to lots of doctors, but that type of dentistry wasn't interesting to most dentists. So, but fortunately, it just takes one. And we found a female buyer and she's loving it and making great money. And it took about 1.5 years to sell that. And additionally, when he came to me, he was only doing about $500,000. I was like, come on, doctor, you need to add more staff. You need to do some more marketing.
I love that.
You have a lot of capacity here. And so he took my advice and ramped it up. And by the time he sold, he had 4 staff members, someone to replace his wife. And so I helped him make a ton of money before he sold, and then got him a much larger valuation when he did sell. At $500,000, it probably wasn't sellable. But at $1 million, it was sellable. So that was a great success story for all of us. And it took a few years to actually get there.
Okay.
It took a client that's willing to listen to what I have to say. Not everyone's willing to make changes. And that's okay. My job is to help people make informed decisions. I never make any decisions for a doctor. It's always their call on what we do, but I can bring my 30 plus years of experience to these situations, give them perspectives on what can happen if we do this, what can happen if we approach it this way. So I just want to be that source of information so doctors can make an informed decision.
Yeah. Consultative sales, seller side process of helping them get through the process. And I like that. Any certain areas in Texas that are more profitable, or is it all the same, or is it bigger cities get more value, or the rural areas get less value? Anything that people should know about selling or buying
Sure.
business practices in Texas?
I mean, I think the cities, it's a seller's market for sure. So values are higher. Rural practices are typically more profitable. There's a lot more full fee practices in rural areas. Costs are much lower in the rural areas, from rent to staff costs. So typically rural practices, there's just more money that falls to the bottom line. When you're in the city, rents are higher, especially in Dallas. I mean, the rents are just going astronomical. If you also are a PPO practice in the city, your fees are obviously lower. So you get squeezed on both ends. Staff costs are higher, PPO fees are lower, rent's higher. It's tougher in the Dallas market, but this is where people want to live. So
you got to do more volume to make up for that. Can this rural practice in Texas do $1 million in revenue a year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's not atypical at all.
Really? They get more than that?
I've got 3 listings right now that are over $1 million in rural Texas.
Ooh, that's a good point. Tell us about that. So you got 3 rural right now that are available. You got any available in big cities people need to know about?
Well, I've got $2 million OS practice in the Houston area. I've got a $4 million prosthodontic practice available in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I've got $1.9 million full fee practice available in the Park Cities, Highland Park. Another one in Highland Park that's doing $900,000 a year.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I like that. So let's talk about the younger dentists coming in and buying, and they're coming in buying with a lot of debt. Does that have an effect on the marketplace, or is that like typical? Is it easily for them to recover once they make the decision to purchase a practice and take on debt and then grow it?
Sure. So fortunately, banks love making loans to dentists because the default rate is so infinitesimal. So as long as the deal cash flows for the buyer, if the practice cash flow can service the practice debt, the doctor's student debt, and then of course have enough money for him to personally live, then they'll make the loan. The caveat is banks do require a 10% liquidity position for the buyer. So if you're buying $1 million practice, you need to have $100,000 in cash or stocks that are immediately convertible to cash. So they don't ask you to put that money into the deal, but they want you to have that liquidity as a cushion.
Does the SBA get involved with dental practice loans?
Absolutely. They're a wonderful resource. They're a little bit more difficult to work with. The cost of the money is much higher. And often doctors that don't have the level of liquidity required by conventional banks will go to the SBA route. All brokers try to avoid the SBA if we can, just because it's a much longer process. But yeah, that's always a great back end.
We've covered a lot of material. I wonder if there's anything I left out you want to tell us about doing deals and buying and selling of dental practices in Texas. Did we not cover anything that you would want to mention, include, watch out for?
Nothing's coming to mind.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of good material there. We created a good value for the people who are going to watch this and are in the market to buy or in the market to sell potentially. You gave some really good real world scenarios in there. We'll use those for social media clips and put that on your social as well.
Great.
And I appreciate you coming on, and just stand by with me 1 second after we end this. But Rich, thank you. Dental practice, Texas practice transitions. How do people find you?
Well, they can Google my company name. They can Google my name.
tp-tx.com.
Or just type in Texas practice transitions in Google. That'll pop right up.
There you go. And you're getting ranked right now as we speak, and you'll be #1 for dental practice in Texas, right? Brokerage. I love it.
As it should be.
Rich, thanks for coming on. Cheers.
Thanks, Clayton. Bye-bye.